has worked as a strategy manager for Cadbury India Limited before selection as an IAS officer in 2015. Before her selection as an IAS officer in 2015, she was rejected as an IRS officer in the same examination, despite clearing it due to her disability. She decided to fight the rejection in Central Administrative Tribunal and won after a battle of 3 years. While waiting to join as an IRS officer, she gave the examination again and got selected as an IAS officer. She currently serves as DC of Keshapuram Zone in North Delhi Municipal Corporation. She is a brand ambassador for Disability, Department of Disability, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India, and also brand ambassador for Niti Aayog, and is on the National Panel for Accessible Elections, Election Commission of India. Her innumerable awards include India Today's Woman of the Year 2015, President's Gold Medal for topping the IAS training, First Ladies of India Award by the Ministry of Women and Child Development, Government of India. She is also recorded in the Limca Book of Records. She has been working towards various social causes, including empowerment of persons with disabilities, empowerment and promotion of transgender community, women empowerment, prevention of child labor and child marriages, prevention of illegal conversion of green lands, promoting green energy, skill development, promotion of mental health, and promotion of khadi and indigenous fabrics. She's also the first person to give a job to a transgender person, full-time employment in the government office. Big hand for her. Sure. So Prerna would like to relieve me. Thank you, Prerna.
So it's my proud privilege to ask questions to the dignitaries I have always aspired to sit across. So it's my pleasure to ask few questions to Sir and Ma'am. Leher is not joining us because she has reached another venue by mistake. Google always is not right, so it takes it to the other one. Yeah. So I have to do it. So Ira, tell me one thing. You are a woman and you are a bureaucrat. There are a lot of challenges in every job aspect, but I would like to understand, being a bureaucrat and being a woman, how do you tackle it? So what challenges you faced, what are the key learnings out of it, please?
Give that mic if you have.
Yeah.
That will make it. It's working good.
So I will say this in bureaucracy, I think women are a little luckier because unfortunately the scenario is such that we live in a very mistrustful society. So whatever you do, people question it and people think you're doing it with a negative intention. So in the case of women officers, I think that the doubt of intention starts a little later. While for male officers, the first time that they put pen to paper, it starts. For us, I think it's a little easier that way. That people don't right out of the gate doubt our intention whenever we make a decision or whenever we, take a call. So I think that way we have it a little easier. And other than that, I think there is that little camaraderie that exists, which is there between the because your lower staff is generally male. There are offices where there is only, I think currently in my office I might be the only permanent lady staff. There is nobody else in my whole office. I have people, sweepers in the field, but other than that in the office building there is nobody else. So that also means that you are basically swimming through the whole thing yourself, and the information channels that are open to male officers because of that is a little are a lot more than they are to us, because people don't really give you the information to that extent. Those channels are a little blocked for us. But other than that, I do think that when it comes to respect and actually being able to execute, the public supports us a little more. That first question of why did this person do this doesn't happen with us as much as it unfortunately does with a lot of my male colleagues. So
sir, I asked you earlier also. You have written a book, not just a...
Before you come to that, let me comment on what he has said. First of all, compliments to those that have stayed back. The lunch was lovely. It would have instigated a number of people to go and take rest, which they did. And those of you that stayed back, compliments. Second, I think what Ira said has to be understood in the right context. Normally, when you talk to a civil servant, and that to a lady civil servant, she will first tell you what are the problems that they face. Here is an officer who looks at positive side of everything. I have attended a number of conferences. I have heard a number of officers. I have not seen such a positive attitude, and compliments to you, Ira, for that. It was absolutely remarkable for you to pick on positives from everything that you came across. I think that's what it is all about. You have absolutely no control whatsoever on the set of circumstances. It's your subjective thinking that determines whether you want to change them to a positive or not. And I'm so glad you said what you said. Now you can ask your question.
Sir, I asked you earlier also, and again I would like to ask here because now we have an audience to listen to. You have written a book. What inspired you to write a book on a bureaucracy? Because in India, nobody is vocal about this subject because it is too sensitive to come out and speak about it. So what prompted you to record the works which you have done? What challenges you faced, and what are the key learnings of that book?
You know, throughout my career of 38 years, I got this feeling that there's a lot of negativity around. And we are in this habit of condemning things around us. And as civil servants, we are very fond of condemning the politician. My book is all around telling everyone, including our own colleagues, that irrespective of set of circumstances, which indeed are pretty tough, if a civil servant so desires, he can bring about phenomenal amount of change, and that's his job. His job is to make things happen on the ground, and no matter what be the problems, and Ira is a living example of that, you can make things happen, provided you are committed, provided you are determined, provided you have the clarity, provided you have the leadership qualities. And if a civil servant has that, he can make it happen, and my book is all about it. In fact, instead of being titled as not just a civil servant, it could have easily been titled Making Things Happen in the Government, because that's what it is all about.
That's important. So Ira, my question to you is, when you cleared your civil services, there, and you fought for so many years for that, to get your right position. So can you tell us what all was there in your mind when you were fighting for this? And you know, you have come across from the society which is totally different from where you are. So what are the differences you faced, and did your family support it? Whom you would like to give a credit to?
It has to be my family in that respect. I wouldn't be anything of what I am if I did not get that. And I have live examples in front of me where women in the same circumstances as me, girls with disabilities, their families constantly told them there is something wrong with you, and their potential has completely died out, and they've been put into extremely bad social circumstances simply because their families chose to focus on their disabilities rather than their abilities. At the same time, I had batchmates in engineering and MBA whose parents thought, no, my child can do something, and those girls were actually doing better than their own brothers and sisters who did not have disabilities. So, you know, it's about the way the family thinks, and I have been very lucky that I got a family which only chose to see the positives and not the negatives. Coming to the fight with the disability rejection, honestly, I have never been rejected by the corporate sector or by the educational institutions basis the disability. So for me, it was quite a surprise in that respect that the government, which has the only mandate to implement equality, is the one who's choosing not to. And you know, so for me that was a surprising part. But I'll be very honest, as a person with disability, you are used to rejections. Because at something or the other, you are constantly being rejected by the society, by the world around you. So you're sort of used to rejection. So it's usually the case of, yeah, one more thing happened. And you learn to figure out how do you solve things. You kind of, see, if you want to do anything, you will have to start focusing on how do I solve this rather than, oh my God, this happened. So, you know, after the first statement of this has happened, you then start asking the question of how do we change this now? How do we remove this? How do we move past this? And I've been used to that, so for me, it was about getting things to say the right thing, you know, getting that paper which removed that bias rather than worrying about, oh my God, this happened. I think then it was figuring out why this is happening, what are the laws that need to be amended for this, what are the departments who will do this, how do we go about it, and it was about fighting that injustice, I would say.
Sir rightly said that.
You know, her statement reminds me of a wonderful couplet. I'm from Lucknow, so I'm very fond of Urdu couplets. And I must narrate that couplet to you. खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है. You know, she epitomized it. That's why and I recall that couplet, which focuses on what you can, not on what the circumstances are. The fact that she was born with a disability was not her doing. It was a data given to her. And it was her strength, her resolve that she is where she is. And that's why she's an inspiration to a lot of people, a lot of young officers. It's not merely this disability, there could be any other disability. The huge amount of disabilities that people come up with. It's a question of accepting that as a data and then building on that data. And that's why quite a few of us are extremely proud of what she is and what she's trying to do. God bless you.
So we are talking about positivities around, and recently you have launched a portal called Nexus of Goods. So can you throw some light that what it is and how it is bringing change in the society?
You know, as a civil servant later part of my career, I found that nation wants to know only negative things. You know, the world has either collapsed or is about to collapse. You look at the television, all negativity. You look at the newspapers, only negative news is served. And I don't blame the media for it. There was a discussion on media. I wish I could respond to that question. But what does media give you? Media gives you what you want. We are so fond of masala in India, so they give you masala. Now, how do you change that narrative? How do you turn that negativity into positivity? Whether you look at social media, whether you look at regular print media or visual media, everywhere there's negativity. You can't shun them, you can't avoid them, so join them. So what I decided was, let's attempt to start a positive narrative called the Nexus of Good. If all the rascals and ruffians can come together and form a nexus of evil, why can't there be a nexus of good? Now what is this nexus of good all about? It's a very simple thing. You look around and when you see anything good happening, anything positive happening, first notice it, then understand it, then appreciate it. हमारी तरफ लखनऊ में कहते हैं, आप मुक्त कंठ से बुराई करते हैं, मुक्त कंठ से तारीफ क्यों नहीं करते? Appreciate it. मुक्त कंठ से तारीफ कीजिए. Then try and replicate it. And finally try and scale it. That's what Nexus of Good is all about. So we started in a very small manner. We set up a Twitter handle at the rate of Nexus of Good. It did pretty well. It got a lot of traction. So we set up a web portal wherein these stories are put every day. There is a Nexus of Good story of the day. And finally now we set up a foundation. So what are we trying to do? In the past few meetings that we've had of Nexus of Good, we've roadshowed such things that are happening around us which are otherwise not noticed. And the good thing is that they are expanding phenomenally. Where did this inspiration come from? When I became Secretary of Education, I was arguably the most illiterate and uneducated civil servant to have been made Education Secretary because I had no experience whatsoever. I was before that coal secretary. So probably the government thought that from dark dungeons of coal mine I'll come to the bright lights of education. But what I found in education, that the mafias in education were worse than coal. So what do? So I went around the country looking for good examples of good work that is happening. And I must narrate one example to you which inspired me into doing Nexus of Good. I walked into a school. This was a government primary school, 150 kilometers north of Thane district, in tribal area, in a place called Pastepada. As I walked into this government primary school, I was told that it has no electricity, but I was pleasantly surprised that every child had a tablet. So I asked the teacher, Sandeep Gund, where do you get the electricity from? He took me around the school, showed me a foldable solar panel through which he was getting this electricity and he was charging these tablets. Then the next question was, how did he manage to get these tablets? He said, well sir, when I had come here, there were only about 40-50 children of all shapes and sizes and ages. So half of them never came to the school. So he used to play those educational videos in the second-hand laptop that he had. Gradually, these children started finding interest in it. After 2 months, about 20 parents came to the school asking him a very funny question. They asked him, earlier the children never went to the school, now they want to run to the school. What have you done? So this Pastepada teacher, Sandeep Good, answered that he was showing him this videos. Finding these parents interested, he requested them to contribute 500 rupees each, which they did, and he bought 2 tablets, attached them to the laptop, made them into 3 groups, age-wise. In the meanwhile, some CSR funding agency and an NGO, they got to know of this good work. They came to the school, and they were very impressed with the passion of the teacher. So they decided to fund the school with all the tablets and a smart screen. Around that time, Mr. Anil Swarup visited that school as Secretary School Education, Government of India. Normally that doesn't happen. Normally secretaries don't go around to the field. I did. So when I saw this, I was very impressed. I took a photograph with this teacher and tweeted it. Suddenly he became a local hero. It became a pilgrimage for schools around him. Other schools started coming here, started replicating in their own way. In the meanwhile, I met the President of India in a totally different context. He had just taken over as President. So I narrated this lovely story to him and asked him whether you'd like to meet the teacher. He said yes. I called the teacher over to Delhi. He met the President of India. Photograph taken, tweeted, he becomes a national hero. But this is not the end of the story. The Pastepada model, the model that I spoke about, has now been replicated in more than 50,000 schools of Maharashtra. This is Nexus of Good. Finding a good school, and not a single penny for this replication has come from the government. 354 crores through crowdfunding. That's Nexus of Good. That's what gave me the idea, and that's how Nexus of Good is evolving.
Ira, you have a good career ahead. So what are your aspirations now? You have fought your battle, you have already won it. So what are your aspirations going forward?
So I think that's the best part about
Battle
it.
won. This is a long road ahead of her. You can say that to me whether I lost or won. But she has a long road ahead of her.
I think that's the best part about our service, that you can't really make goals. They come to you. So wherever you are, a new problem will come to you, and you'll be able to implement a new solution, you'll be able to do a new thing. So I think we don't really have the time or the brain space to really think about proper projects. But yes, one of the things that I'm starting up is we're setting up, for example, this is a recent thing, I'm going to launch it day after tomorrow. We are setting up daycare and creches for 12 hours inside my government schools. And the idea is that children from 6 months to 12 years will come to my creche. I already have water, playground, electricity and a safe space in my school. There are kids, mothers who have children who are, 1-year-olds and 4-year-olds who can drop both of them at the same place and in the evening take them both back. In Delhi, working women of lower class generally have a working day of 12 hours. If you think about it, it takes her 2 hours to reach her place of work, 8 hours she works and 2 hours to come back. So that really makes it 12 hours for her. So what we're saying is we are going to keep your child safe. And we're going to educate your child, we're going to give nutrition to your child, and this is completely on a CSR mode. So there are lots of things like that can happen. We're also looking to set up, so all the rehab centers for children with disabilities exist in the south of Delhi. They don't exist in the north. So you have Sadhja, you have AIMS, you have all the big hospitals, everything is in the south. There's really nothing in the north. So we're trying to set up 10 centers for children with disabilities for their rehab, because if you get it at the right age, then a lot of your problems because of disabilities vanish. And we're trying to set up 10 of those. We're hoping we'll get CSR funding for that. Besides that, whatever opportunity comes our way, that's I think the biggest attraction of our service, that wherever you go, you can make a new little project and a new little change.
Great, Ira. I would like to invite Sethi, though she has reached to another venue, now she's back. So I'm not that great moderator, so she will handle the panel. No.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm really sorry. I think we can blame this on Delhi traffic and my, little bit of miscommunication. I actually reached the other CSOI and then I called Ira and we were like, yeah, okay. So sorry about that. Okay, so I, we're in the internet age, and I have a couple of questions that I'd written. Last evening, I was reading a lot of what you've written, sir, about your experiences of having been in the Indian bureaucracy, and it was very interesting to come across a lot of the stories that you've written for various newspapers. Okay, so you've written this book called Not Just a Civil Servant, right, in which you've spoken about, I was just going through this Indian Express edX interview that you've given, in which you said that you used to document what you did every day, the next day in the morning. Tell us about that.
You know, this habit came to me when I joined the police service. Before I joined the IS, I was in the police. And we used to have very tough days. So I thought, let me try and write down what I faced yesterday. So it is a bit of a relief also, it comes out, whatever is there in your mind, you write down and you can attempt to forget it. One never did though. So got into this habit of jotting down a page every day. That came very handy when I got down to writing this book. Because more than anything else, the chronology was right, the dates were right, the period was right, of course the ideas were built. And got some ideas also as one wrote. And I keep advising all the civil servants, keep a note of what you're doing. It helps. It has helped me.
Very interesting. So were there like a lot of things that would turn scandalous in those notes? Were they to come out
Oh, certainly.
in the open?
A lot of scandals, they will be there in my second book.
All right, wonderful. We look forward to reading that. So you've written in one of the interviews that I was reading, you said that we are so fond of policy in India, but we forget about the implementation of those policies. So you've said that the country doesn't need policies anymore, it actually needs action plans. So what are the challenges that you've actually faced when it comes to implementation of policies? And this is a question for both you and Ira, because Ira, I remember having this conversation with you about having a woman boss, right? It's not easy, I believe, to handle a position of power in the Indian civil services for a woman, from coming from that standpoint. So I'd like you to answer from that perspective, and sir, you I'd like to ask in general that where has it been most difficult?
Okay, let me put it slightly differently to answer your question. Having an idea and policy is the easiest thing on earth. You put a problem here, everyone will have a solution to it. The problem in a democracy like ours is for an idea to fructify and sustain, it has to be politically acceptable, socially desirable, technologically feasible, financially viable, administratively doable, and judicially tenable. That's the problem. So until you sorted these out, it will just be an idea. The best, I'll just give you an example. When Dr. Kasturi Rangan came over to meet me as Education Secretary for the new education policy, I told him why you are necessarily taking the trouble. You just write 2-line policy, providing quality education to every child in the country, and the policy is over. Because you will write a long policy, which he did, a very long policy, 400 pages, and we're still debating. I got employment, so many people got employment for just the policy. No one is bothered about implementation. The real problem is implementing. So I told him, make out an action plan for every state, clearly outlining what needs to be done, how it will be done, who will do it, by when it will be done, period, and get it done. Because you can't have a single policy for the entire country. If a teacher doesn't go to school in Kerala, he or she will be lynched. In UP, he takes it as a right not to go to the school. How can you sit and make policies here? We have conducted disaster by creating these policies at the central level. We believe that all wisdom resides in Delhi, which it doesn't. I have traveled to 24 states as Education Secretary and discovered enormous amount of wisdom lying in other states. Please leave them alone, let them do it. Draw broad contours of what you have to do and leave the details to the state. That's how you can implement things.
I think that rings true for not just the administrative services, but a lot of other things within the country. Yeah, Ira, your take.
Actually, I kind of did answer that already. So, as a boss, like I said, the one thing that goes missing is the free flow of information that you get from your staff. And they're very unsure of you, which works in our positive also, because then they don't know if you're going to really take a decision, and throw them out or take, a mark inquiry against them. So they're a little always unsure of where and how you are going to react to their actions, but it also keeps them on their toes, because as a female boss, they know that the sympathy factor that they will try to get from you is restricted to the 2 minutes that they can speak to you in office. Other than that, they don't have access to you, they don't get to manipulate you like that. So that works out in our favor. So I think it's also very individualistic, because there are a lot of officers who are very, very on the kind and forgiving side. There are those who are not. So we can't really say that all women officers have this problem or all male officers have that problem, because there is that boundary that some of us can be persuaded and some of us can't be. So I'll tell you one thing that happens though invariably, and that happens to me, I think in specific, whenever there is some action that we have taken which is a penal action against the public, people bring the oldest person in their house as well as the most informed person of their house to my office. They will drag that person who cannot walk and who cannot even sit, and they'll get the oldest person in the house and they will get them to come and talk to us, which is basically people playing the emotional blackmail game. Like, see, these people exist in my family, now you allow me to do whatever. So for example, we're doing ceilings right now because of polluting units, and everybody knows what a sad situation that happened a few days ago. So because of that, we're trying to control all these things. So whenever we go somewhere and we try to seal a place, they will bring in the oldest person of the household, and yes, it's generally old women. So there'll be 10 women of the family who will come to your office, and they'll be like, we're going to be on the street if you shut down our factory. So it's a lot of emotional blackmail that is attempted on lady officers especially. It doesn't always work because we also have we are officers, we're not genders. So that doesn't really work, but that's one thing that is attempted every day. Every day.
Interesting. So they just assume that as a lady officer, you'll be more sympathetic to them.
Yes.
Okay. One thing that, as a layman, as somebody who's had a little bit of experience working with the bureaucracy, because I worked with a member of parliament till last year. One thing that occurred to me and has always kind of been a question that's hounded me is, how does a bureaucrat who's educated, deal with certain elements of the ministry, ministers in this case, in your case that I'm referring to, who might not always be as well educated. Has it been difficult, or how difficult has it been at times to make them understand where you're coming from? Or how do you deal with this? How have you dealt with it in your career?
What life has taught me is that education has nothing to do with wisdom. Absolutely nothing to do with wisdom. Wisdom comes through experience, through desire to learn, which is not equivalent to knowledge. And I have come across ministers who are pretty learned. They may not be as educated as I would be, but that doesn't really matter. It's a question of what value that minister gets to you. The problem is on a different front altogether, and I will again quote a couplet to explain that point. And those who understand Urdu will understand it. मुख्तसर सी जिंदगी के अजब से अफसाने हैं, यहाँ तीर भी चलाने हैं, परिंदे भी बचाने हैं. That's the tragedy. That's the real problem. It's not a question of ministers. As a civil servant, I tell my colleagues when I talk to senior, junior, all shapes and sizes, I address them, I tell them, you have to bring in value there. You must understand the political limitation of a politician. And if you are unable to package your idea, which is politically acceptable to him, no matter how brilliant your idea is not. I'll give you an example, which is there in my book also. You all would have seen the chaos that followed the paper leak in CBSE exam a year ago. Chaotic. And as secretary, I was on a personal reason in Dehradun attending to my father, ailing father. And he had to be brought to Delhi, and when this all hell broke loose. So I rang up the minister, I messaged him, I told him, why don't you talk to the media? But he wouldn't listen to me. He wouldn't talk to the media, and it snowballed into a very serious crisis. I remember while traveling in an ambulance with my father, I kept messaging my boss, my minister, but he refused to listen. And since I was literally badgering him, he finally told Anita Karwal, the chairman CBSE, you give a bite to the media. That bite became a real bite. Situation became worse. By the time I reached Delhi and got my father admitted in the hospital, next morning I went and called on the minister. Now here's the trick. Here's an educated minister, a very fine person, but who won't relent on this. The first thing he tells me on arrival at his residence is कि अनिल जी, Anita Karwal को तो हटाना पड़ेगा. मैंने हाँ सर क्यों? उसकी क्या गलती है? बोले नहीं, सिचुएशन डिफ्यूज हो जाएगी. So I told him, sir, मैं यूपी से हूँ, तो रोज ऐसी आती रहती है. हम बात करके नहीं अनिल जी आप नहीं समझते. अब उसके बाद आप कुछ नहीं जवाब दे सकते, आप नहीं समझते, अब क्या बताएंगे आप? Then I thought immediately to packaging my idea in political terms. What did I do? I told him, sir, अभी तो पूरा जोर CBSE, जैसी वो हटेगी लोग आपके पीछे पड़ जाएंगे हटाने के लिए. Now this appealed to him. Now that is the presence of mind you should have. Immediately agreed with my suggestion. And then, of course, rest is history. We went to the PMO, I addressed the media conference, everything got diffused. And I didn't have to move. The point that I'm trying to make here is, it is not that before you came, I was telling everyone, the politician is a politician. You must accept him as that. Don't think everything that the politician says is wrong. He may, as much as I say wrong, he would also say a few things wrong. It's a question of an accommodation without breaking any rule. I don't recall having broken any rule any time. But you have to accommodate the minister. You have to understand his limitation. Don't treat every politician as corrupt. There are bureaucrats corrupt, there are politicians corrupt. Again, before you came, I spoke about nexus of good. How about goodness in an individual combining with goodness of others and creating a vibration which is much more than 1 + 1? So that's what you've got to attempt to do if you want to succeed in life, or for that matter, as a civil servant.
Thank you. So, I'm going to quote you on this. Again, this is somewhere that I found you written something that was very interesting to read. So I'm going to read this to all of you. So Mr. Anil Swarup has said in one of his interviews that I don't think there is any service in this world that allows you to thrive irrespective of your competence and integrity. So if you are incompetent and dishonest, you can still thrive. But if you are honest and efficient, you can survive, thrive, make changes and derive satisfaction. So, would you like to touch upon that and explain?
I'd like to stand by it.
Yeah.
If my book starts with a statement that it was because of my father that I became an IS officer. He wanted me to become an IS officer. My book ends by saying that if I were to be born again, I'd like to be an IS officer all over again. Precisely for these reasons. And something which I have not written here in the book is as follows. I tell people, it is the only service in India where if you are efficient, you might become Secretary Government of India. If you are inefficient, you could even become Cabinet Secretary Government of India. Which service gives you that?
So I'd like to hear what Ira has to say to that.
I have little experience to be able to comment on that, honestly.
Too early for that.
Yeah.
So you've been around. You cleared the IS. You topped it in 2015, right? And it has been 4 years since you've been serving as an IS officer, as a civil services officer. So since our panel's name is the challenges of Indian bureaucracy, what is the one challenge that stands apart for you, that you'd like to tell us about?
I think accepting the problems that you can't find a solution to. That's the biggest challenge, because when we all join, we think we will be able to solve things, and it's very disheartening that there are certain issues that you will not have solutions to, and to learn to move on from that and find other things that you can do. I mean, there's always something that you can do, but I think the biggest challenge is letting go of the issues that you will never be able to solve. For example, I'll honestly tell you, I would love to solve the problem of cows and dogs on the road. But I know that during my little span, there is just so much I can do. I will not be able to really solve the problem. So, there are these little issues. We stopped, in MCD, we stopped this policy of giving kiosks to people with disabilities and to widows and all. Now, I get tons of these people to my office every day saying, give me some job. And I know there is nothing I can offer them. I did come up with one solution. We are doing skill training within our office. I gave space to training partners, and I'm getting them to train some of the people. But there will still always be this one lot that is not trainable also. That is not people that I can give jobs that I cannot help. And I know that woman has 8 children. And she's a widow, 8 children, never went to school. How do I help her? So I think that's the biggest challenge, accepting those.
I would like to quote Reinhard Niebuhr. He's an American monk who made a very seminal sentence, which I tell all my colleagues, junior, senior, everyone. Lord, grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, courage to change things I can, and the wisdom to understand the difference between the two. This is the essence of our existence. Before I joined the IS, I was in the police. I remember one day a colleague of mine who was undergoing training walked up to me and said, "Boss, रात को नींद नहीं आ रही." I said, "क्या हो गया?" "Boss, पेट्रोलियम के दाम बहुत बढ़ रहा है." तो मैंने कहा, "यार, पेट्रोलियम दाम से तुमसे क्या लेना देना?" "नहीं बॉस, देश की आर्थिक स्थिति पर कुप्रभाव पड़ रहा है." So people then also were very hassled about. I used to call them Mr. Pareshan. They didn't do anything, but परेशान रहते थे. मैंने कहा, "यार, तुम्हारे रात के ना सोने से पेट्रोलियम के दाम तो ठीक नहीं होंगे. तुम कुछ कर सकते हो क्या?" बोले, "यार, कर तो नहीं सकते." हमने कुछ नहीं कर सकते. डिस्कशन के लिए ठीक है, रात की नींद क्यों आराम कर रहे हो? हाँ यार, सही कह रहे हो. चला गया. 3 महीने बाद फिर आया. फिर कहता, "बॉस, रात को नींद नहीं आ रही." हमने कहा, "क्या हो गया यार? अब तो पेट्रोलियम के दाम तो अपने आप ठीक हो गए बिना तुम्हारे इंटरवेंशन." "नहीं बॉस, इंडिया की पॉपुलेशन बहुत बढ़ रही है." मैंने उसका रात को सोचा यार अपने आप ठीक हो जाएगी.
Okay, just coming back to that question of challenges. So you were with the Chief Minister of UP when the Babri Masjid demolition happened. So that's one thing I would like to personally ask you about. How was it dealing with that situation at hand, being there, seeing what was going on? And in case that is the biggest challenge, or any other challenge that you'd like to tell us about in your entire career spanning 38 years, when has it been? What is the one thing, the one challenge?
I cannot pick on a challenge because I soon understood that दिखाई कम दिया करते हैं बुनियाद के पत्थर, जमीन में दब गए जो इमारत उन्हीं पे कायम है. So what you have to do is do your work in your own small way. You will never. But there are huge challenges that you got, and it's like apples and oranges. You can't compare the challenges, but gradually one started thriving on those challenges. Because I remember when I was posted as school secretary, everything had gone wrong. I mean, all scams had broken. I didn't know much about the sector, so I called up a friend of mine and I asked him, "यार, ये sector कैसा है?" So instead of answering my question, he asked me a question. Gangs of Wasseypur देखी है क्या? हो गया इंतजाम. मुझे पता लग गया कैसा है sector. So when I walked into that room of Secretary Government of India, it was like walking to a graveyard. CBI was chasing files, officers, everyone's running, his helter-skelter. Things were terrible. Now how do I look at it? I looked at it in the following manner. I said, things are so bad that they won't become worse. Anything that is going to happen will be an improvement and I can walk away with that credit. But God was very kind. I was, always throughout my career, I had such fantastic teams, absolutely amazing, that they did all the walking and I did all the talking. They did all the hard work and I walked away with all the credit. So that's how life is. So there were challenges, but the bigger the challenge, the bigger the excitement. Initially, of course, in the initial few years, I used to think, "Ye kaise hoga?" In coal ministry, at some point in time, around this round table which I had in my room, we said, "Give us the Kashmir problem, we just might find a solution to that problem." That was the positive energy. That's why when I sit with Ira, she gives me a lot of energy. She's looking at positive every damn thing. That's remarkable. At her age, seniority, I didn't have that positivity. I developed over a period of time. But it's remarkable to see. I only pray to God that she continues in a positive frame of mind. She continues to inspire many other civil servants and other people around her.
You didn't tell us about the Babri Masjid. Sorry.
On Babri Masjid, very interestingly, I was the only person with Mr. Kalyan Singh at his residence. We weren't in Ayodhya. I remember that's a chapter of my book and very controversial chapter of my book. Because I remember as I walked into that room, Mr. Kalyan Singh was sitting alone. Normally Chief Minister, I had never seen him alone. He was sitting alone in a very pensive mood. Very pensive. He normally very cheerful, nice chap. He's very concerned. And then I heard a conversation that he had with Bhairav Shekhawat. That is when the news came that the domes have come down. And Mr. Kalyan Singh was livid with Mr. Bhairav. Then a phone call with Mr. Advani. He was livid. What was he saying? He said, "मैंने आप लोगों को मना किया था कि इतने लोगों को इकट्ठा मत कीजिए यहाँ." Mr. Kalyan Singh was totally against demolition of Babri Masjid. And I say it with all the conviction, all the experience, all the first-hand information that I had. He had his own solution to the problem. And very interestingly, the solution that the Supreme Court has provided now was actually provided by Kalyan Singh in 1991. When the masjid came down, before that, he was working toward that solution. I was privy to some of the discussions. with some of the groups of the minority community, where he was suggesting to them, मैं आपको इतनी अच्छी जगह दूंगा जहां इससे बढ़िया मस्जिद बनाइए, क्योंकि इस मस्जिद में तो आप नमाज भी नहीं पढ़ते, ये तो आपके डेफिनेशन के हिसाब से मस्जिद है भी नहीं, जहां 12 साल नमाज नहीं पढ़ी गई वो तो मस्जिद के डेफिनेशन में आती नहीं है, मैं आपको एक भव्य मस्जिद बनाइए, मैं जगह दूंगा. And you know, some people were coming around. Imagine it took this country 28 years to come to the solution which Kalyan Singh was offering. That's what my book says. Because people refuse to believe that Kalyan Singh did not have other solution. He had other solution in mind. And look at it intuitively and otherwise. Why would a chief minister want to drown his own government in this? I mean, he would have known that if this comes down, his government will go. And what fabulous work he was doing. So, my argument is totally different, my facts are totally different from what is generally known. But that was an amazing day for me. I had never seen him so tense. And the final act of his was quite remarkable. He asked me to get a piece of paper. I got a piece of paper. In his handwriting, he wrote that he wants to take the entire responsibility of what has happened. No officer and nobody else should be held responsible. Contrast this with what was done later on by Dr. Manmohan Singh when he said that I was misled into taking decision poll scams. So you compare this. And I've written that in my... No holds barred is this book. Whatever I had to say, I've said it, irrespective of the consequences.
Thank you. I think that you need to get somewhere, so we will wind up the panel. Sorry for being late, but it was very interesting having this conversation with both Ira, who's a good friend, and you, Mr. Swarup. It was a real pleasure. I look forward to actually reading the book. I hope I'm getting a copy. Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much for being such a wonderful audience.